shopping locally means more than just going into a brick-and-mortar store. When you shop in downtown Edenton, that dollar that paid for your prescription pays for a granddaughter's ballet lessons. That same dollar then goes on to buy your new favorite blouse. Followed by an anniversary gift. When you shop at local businesses, your dollar never leaves home, supporting your friends, your neighbors, and your family. Keep your dollar in downtown Edenton.
Call the meeting to order and welcome all of you to the special meeting of the Edenton Town Council. And thanks to you council members for making the extra effort to come to this special meeting. It is one of significant importance because we're going to have the presentation of audit tonight by Donna Windham. And with that being said, Donna, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I've never had a special call meeting with the Council. This feels very special. So I am pleased to be here and pleased to present your June 30th, 2018 audit. The financial statements are management's responsibility. My responsibility is to issue an opinion based on my audit, which we have done, and you have received an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level that you can receive, and it means that the statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. If you will turn to page 16 in your audit, that's Exhibit 3, and it's the balance sheet for your governmental funds. The first column is your general fund, and if you look to the third number up from the bottom, and that lists your unassigned fund balance on June 30th. And that number is $635,099. Now, if you turn to Exhibit 4, which is actually just turn 2 pages over. This is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for governmental funds for the year ended June 30th, 2018. Again, the general fund column is the first one, and the third number up from the bottom indicates a decrease for the year of $480,676. So that's why our fund balance dropped to the degree that it did. And I know you have some other things to discuss, and you already have been about that, but I did want to point out, we always talk about your percentage, and local government likes to see at least 8%, and I believe we're just shy of 10% at the end of this year. But yeah, I know you've already discussed those reasons why, so I'm not going to get into that part of it. I just wanted to bring that up. If you go to Exhibit 7 on page 22, this is your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund net position for your proprietary funds, which is the electric, the water and sewer, and the airport. And the fifth number up from the bottom shows your change for the year. In the electric fund, there was an increase of $214,066. Water and sewer showed a decrease of $25,707. And then airport had an increase of $336,402. And one of the things that I wanted to mention in water and sewer, which it's showing a loss like it did, there were 3 new capital projects that were going on for wastewater abatement and wastewater and water treatment plant. And so prior to consolidating into those 3 funds, into this one, you actually had a profit of about $125,000. And then the airport, of course, the fuel farm system, those expenditures are capitalized and depreciated. So that's why you may show an increase in that fund, even though you did have quite a bit of expenditures. We capitalized those. One of the things that you're also going to notice that you don't normally see is that we have this restatement or prior period adjustment at the bottom. This isn't like we had last year. This is something called OPEB, and it's for the retiree health benefits. This is a new GASB pronouncement that we needed to implement this year, and everyone is doing it across the state. And so that adjustment is something that we needed to do to get the equity to the point that it should be to implement that GASB. And there's notes in the financial statement, pages 38 to 52, which is a substantial amount of notes. They go into great detail in describing the pension obligations and then the retiree health obligation. We did have, it's listed as 3 findings this year. It's really 2, but we have to repeat one of them in the federal section. So there's 2 findings by nature. So if you just turn to the back, I'll show you where those are. On page A6 is where it starts. The first finding relates to the various reports and balances in the trial balance needing to be reconciled throughout the year, and especially at the end of the year. And so that was listed as a material weakness, and then also pre-audit of expenditures. And I know you've also gone into these in depth, and you've listed what your corrective action plan is, and those things have already been addressed. I believe with the internal control over financial statement preparation with the reconciliation piece, then you've got those accounts are being reconciled already. We're now in December. I think that started several months ago that was going on. And then also with the pre-audit, I believe that's already been addressed as well. But of course, we're reporting at June 30th, so we need to go ahead and have that in here. I do not have a management letter this year. We do have a governance letter, and that's the separate letter that you have in front of you. This is a standard piece of communication where if we had new pronouncements, which we did this year, we would describe those in it. Also, if there were any problems during the audit, we would communicate that to you if we had trouble getting information or various things that we just would feel like we needed to communicate directly with you. Those would be in that report. Besides this new GASB pronouncement that we needed to implement, there isn't anything else unusual in this letter. So that's good. Did you have any questions?
Purchase orders are now being done.
Yes, the pre-audit certificate is required by statute, and that is to make sure that before any expenditures over $500 are made, that a purchase order be issued, and that indicates that approval process verifies that there are funds available in the budget for that expense. And Virginia has done a really good job at counseling the department heads and supervisors on what the requirement is. We are doing a survey to see what other municipalities our size, what their threshold is. $500 might be a little bit cumbersome. It's been that level for many, many years, and we may look at increasing that when we look at our survey results.
Was the restatement, the negative restatement or reducing net positions, was that, I mean, you mentioned it was relative to insurance and
Retiring health.
Is that a result of the increases we made after MAP review across the board?
It really didn't have anything to do with what you did. An actuarial study was done, and they look at what your liability is for the retiree health.
Oh, okay.
So
So it's an
we actually
outside.
get those numbers from the state.
I got you.
And this is the first year that we've had to.
This one. We had some last year, the pension liabilities. This is the retiree health.
Is there a why answer for that?
Well, the state treasurer
They told us
is,
to. Yeah, we had to. Everybody had to do it.
yeah, he's so worried about future unfunded
Unfunded liability.
future liabilities.
Right, so. Okay.
And one of the things, not to go back, but on the pre-audit, we try to really elaborate as we write up the findings so that it really speaks to what's happening. It's really, a lot of it is a documentation issue. You know, we can tell, there's communication that goes on in a small environment, and, you know, everybody kind of knows what's going on, and, you know, there's money there, and sometimes it's after the fact that you're doing the approval, but it's just to get that documentation in place before, because that's how it's written. It needs to be addressed before and then documented that it happened before it was spent. But we know in a lot of cases that communication is already happening, so that's a good thing. It's just that we need to document it.
We are moving forward with purchasing an upgrade to our financial software system that we share with Chowan County. And one of the reasons the town is so excited about moving forward with that is there's a online purchasing component. So it will make it very easy for Public Works to initiate the paperwork without having to physically walk the paperwork from Public Works to Finance and then to get the PO or requisition issued down at the electric department. It's just cumbersome, and but with this online system will be much more efficient and make it 21st century purchasing.
Just as a matter of curiosity, since it was shown again, I'm back on the same subject of the adjustments for unfunded. The town of Edenton's pension, insurance, everything that we pay 2 and 4 employees is totally funded? Or are we running an unfunded position?
This, I believe, will be pay as you go.
Pay as you go? Okay.
And the purpose of this statement is for us to be aware of what our future obligations are going to be.
Yeah.
And I guess I would just say at this point that, you know, the town for many years has, the policy for health insurance is for employees who retire with 30 years of service or more with the town. You will pay their monthly health insurance premium until they reach the age of 65. So our unfunded liability probably is not nearly as high as other local governments in the region or out of state, because that policy is much more, or had been much more liberal. You know, over the years, people are pulling back and changing the policy to affect new hires. And then the other our pension mayor, the local government, retirement system handles that, and you pay that for each employee. But I think what this unfunded liability is looking at is law enforcement. When the law enforcement officers retire with so much service, the town has to pay a supplemental retirement.
The one this year was just on retiree health care.
Okay.
But last
Last
year
year
did
was-
include the law enforcement
Okay.
officers also.
With this audit, the town of Edenton is still financially sound, right?
We are, yes. Well, after Donna finishes with the audit, or if you don't have any questions, we can talk about the reserves and the fund balance.
Yeah, the unassigned fund balance is much lower than what you're used to seeing, but there are reasons why that's the case.
Don't spell out any information you sent us.
Which is very detailed and very well done.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't elaborate on that, because it was already, it addressed it just right. So I do want to thank Virginia and Marie and the finance staff for their help during the audit. We're coming right along, and I anticipate that next year is going to be even more fun. They're happy when we go. I don't know what that means, but no, I think it went along just fine, and so thank you.
Thank you, Donna, for all your help.
Okay, thank you very much, Don,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it. Any other questions, Councilman? Okay. All right, the rest of the agenda, Anne Marie, I'll let you, roll through there if you would.
I will, and I guess I'll start off by saying that as a result of the fund balance and the findings that were noted in the audit, the Local Government Commission reviewed the audit, and then they responded. They wrote a letter, which you all have received, and they also sent a team down, 3 members of their staff visited with Virginia and me and the mayor. I invited the mayor to join us, and he stayed for about 85% of the meeting. We met for over 2 hours, and it was very productive. Virginia and I were able to share with them the reasons why the fund balance declined. Number one, you all planned for using reserves. That $480,000 is kind of right on the money for the street repair and resurfacing program. What compounded it physically, the calculation on paper, so you had that large, you had a $770,000 expense added to the budget. Then we had a number of other one-time capital improvement projects that added significant dollars to the total budget. You had $230,000 for the bulkhead at the waterfront. You had $240,000 almost for the new playground here. And then also the general fund helps cash flow the airport's grants. And so we had an $82,000 expenditure for the new fuel system that happened towards the end of the fiscal year. So you had, a lot of one-time, unusually large expenditures. So part of the formula is when they calculate the fund balance is based on your expenditures. So our expenditures went up almost $1.4 million from the previous year. So not only did you spend $400,000 out of reserve, but you had this much larger bottom line. So you kind of got hit, we got hit twice. Then the third thing was really a matter of timing that the playground was finished the end of May. By the time we got invoiced, and then we turned around and we paid it, and we submitted our reimbursement. It was after July 1st after June 30, so when we got the revenue in, that was great, we had cash in the bank, but the auditor has to look at how much cash was in the bank on June 30. So we had a large number of what are called receivables in the general fund. And between the playground grant, the airport grant of $82,000, we also had a $32,000 refund we were waiting on from the IRS where we had accidentally overpaid, keyed in something wrong and paid twice. And so we had $32,000 there. And, you know, so those receivables don't help your fund balance. So during our meeting, when the local government commission coach team, they call it a coach team, came and talked with us, you know, they reminded us that when we have these large grants, we need to go ahead and hurry up and try to get reimbursed, even if it's a partial reimburse. You know, we generally wait until the project is finished and do one reimbursement, but in the future, we're gonna go ahead, when we get an invoice, we're gonna go ahead and reimburse and get that cash back in the bank. The other thing that they noted was that we had almost $260,000 in loans from the general fund to the water and sewer fund. And that those loans were to pay for upfront the engineering fees that are required for the 3 big capital projects that require engineering reports in order for us to submit applications for loans and grants. And that's all permissible. You know, when you adopt the budget ordinance, we include the resolution authorizing you to, you know, pay for those expenses and then get reimbursed once the loan proceeds are received. What the local government commission recommended was, instead of having the general fund pay for, you know, upfront those loans, and it was nice to see this in the report, their words, that the water and sewer fund was healthy and stable, because, you know, some of you that have been on the council a while, in years past, we've gotten letters saying, you know, you need to raise your rates in order to increase reserves in water and sewer. So the coach team talked to us about setting up a budget amendment whereby you would take the funds from water and sewer reserves and go ahead and pay that loan back to the general fund. So when you account for the receivables for the grant expenditures, repaying that loan, and then calculating the fact that you had an extraordinarily large number of one-time capital improvement projects. That's why fund balance decreased. We've done some hypotheticals, some calculations. You know, what if we, you know, plugged in the receivables, the loan, and then also the third thing they recommended was taking these large capital projects that are in the general fund, that are funded by grants and loans, put them in a separate capital project fund, and that won't hit the general fund's bottom line. So when we did some hypotheticals, and we're still working on it, and we'll hopefully have some models for you at the regular meeting in December, but certainly expect that the fund balance will increase significantly as of June 30 this year.
Is there a certain percentage you look at?
Well,
is
you
there
know,
a range?
there is. Our auditor, previous to Donna, because you know we've worked very hard over the years, the council has, to get the reserves up, always urged the council to get up around 30%. And then when they got to 30, he said, okay, keep going, you got to go to 40%. And the LGC is telling us that we need to be where the average municipality, the average of municipalities our size is. And that's 54%. And I just have a really hard time thinking that, you know, Edenton should be compared to some of the small towns in our population base, because I don't want to be critical or seem like I'm, you know, Edenton is up here, but we're doing a lot of things. You know, you all are investing in infrastructure, you're investing in your waterfront. You know, how many small towns have $300,000 bulkhead repair? How many small towns have a $250,000 universal design playground? I mean, it would be easy to increase fund balance if you didn't do a lot of programs. So anyway, the commission is going to be looking for, and when we sent them a copy of our draft letter, and the staff, the coaching staff said that I need to elaborate more on opportunities to increase the fund balance. So they don't think that the 3 points that I've raised are going to satisfy them, that there's got to be more. And well, I talked about our businesses. I said, you all were here, and they commented. They couldn't believe how vibrant the town was, how busy it was. I said, you know, that vibrancy doesn't happen by accident. That happens because of, you know, investments that the town and the county are making. And I pointed out that, you know, we have 3 major industrial expansions underway, and what the dollar, you know, values of those expansions are, and that we're at a very low unemployment rate, and yet our industries are still creating jobs. And they said, you need to put that in your letter. You need to talk about growth, and that there is going to be new tax revenue being generated, and that sort of thing. So, and they, you know, they said that when I kind of complained about us being measured with other small towns that may not be doing the kind of things that we're doing, and they said, you know, it is what it is. That is the metric that the local government commission uses.
Did you mention to them that the state would pay the money they owe us? That would help considerably.
The division of our good friends at
Property.
Department of Administration.
Yeah.
Kind of alluded to that. Then I have to bite my tongue because they still do owe us $34,000 that we're desperately trying to get back before we go up there January 8th. So,
They also mentioned, I didn't hear you say it in your comments, they asked rather, well, have you raised taxes? It's almost as though they would rather see the community raise taxes to get to this magical 50–55%. But to me, I'm very much in Anne Marie's camp on this. I think reserves are there to be used, not only just to accumulate for a rainy day situation, but if you have, like we did with these grants and so forth, just because the fiscal year ended, it just threw us way down on the percentage drop. The money was there, but it was going to come in another year, so next year we look like geniuses. But anyway, it'd just be a matter of recovering what was already there after July 1st. But I've always felt that the very first year I was elected to this post, I went with Anne Marie and Jerry Parks over to Greenville to meet with the LGC. I mean, we were getting letters almost monthly. Our reserves were down to 8%, which is the bottom of the threshold. And it was a fairly dicey sort of time. So we made the necessary changes to allow the management of money to accrue over to the balance, fund balance account every year, and got it up like she was saying, close to 40%, which to me is at least adequate.
Very.
and we told them, we said, look, you know, the council had been saving money to do this big overlay project. That's what
Yeah.
you know, you have to do when you have that kind of infrastructure. You gotta save your money and then spend it. We did, I told Virginia today, I got a call from Coastal Management congratulating us that our grant, our $111,000 grant for the bulkhead at Queen Anne Park has been approved. I'm like, oh great, Virginia, we got $111,000 expenditure now we have to add, but we'll put that in the capital improvements project and keep that away from the general fund.
Yeah.
So we learned some things. And I did want to mention too, in terms of the internal control, the team, you know, they said, where are you with the monthly reconciliation of the bank statements? And Virginia had everything there signed, and then I review and sign, and we were up to date. They came in November, and every month through October was reconciled, and the same with the sub-ledgers, and they congratulated our finance staff, and I said, well, that's, you know, Virginia, because sometimes they forget. They come from large organizations where they have a number of staff people, but kudos to Virginia for getting that done, and I know that Donna and Courtney were able to help us get situated so that that can be done on a regular basis. So Mayor, I'm going to, if it's okay, just looking at my notes to make sure that I didn't miss anything. A couple of the recommendations that they made, we really want you to review and hopefully you'll consider approving at the December meeting. We think it will be very helpful for the meeting that we go to, that Virginia and I go to in January for our debt approval for the water treatment plant project, for us to be able to say that, number one, the council adopted a budget amendment and the payment of the repayment of the loan from the water and sewer fund to the general fund has been made. That the council adopted a capital improvements, a capital project budget ordinance, so that next year, this current fiscal year, our expenses will be not as dramatic. And then you'll also be asked at the meeting in December to sign the letter, and we are including the, we're going to amend the draft that was sent to you over the weekend to add a narrative about the business climate and the expansions that will be added to the tax base. And also, I noted too that when you raised taxes this year, you designated a portion of that tax to go to the reserve for the street resurfacing program, and they thought that would be key to add to the letter as well. So if you want, we sent you late this afternoon the budget amendments. I can review them here, or you can look at them and we can talk about them at the meeting December 11th, but it's standard what you see previous budget amendments. Virginia shows you where the revenue is coming. So for the loan, water and sewer, that money's coming from fund balance appropriated, and it will be shown as an expense in the water and sewer fund as a transfer to the general fund. And then the general fund, you'll amend the budget to show a new source of revenue, the proceeds from water and sewer. And then on the expense side, what we'll do is we'll show that expense in a contingency line item in the general fund. And we're not allowed to expend contingency funds without council approval, so that money won't be spent, and that will go back to the bottom line. And then the third amendment has to do with the solar farm project. We, in going through the budgets, we realized that when we received the contribution from the solar farm developer last May, we added that to the operating budget of the electric fund, and that really should go as a capital project ordinance. And so we're asking you to approve that capital project as well.
Okay, council members, you've heard the recommended, budget ordinances that need to be addressed. Chair, you wanna do them independent, separately, or?
Well, Mayor, I think what we would like is just for the council to recommend that they be put on the agenda for the December 11th meeting, along with the letter.
So move on that, Mayor.
I'll second.
Okay, in that case, we can just send, do we send it on? or
Send
you
it
want
on.
a- Okay,
Just send it
Whatever
on.
you want, it's
yeah,
fine.
we just send it on, okay?
Did you need to go to anything? We'll send you, we also gave the coach team a copy of a list of our capital improvements projects, kind of a status report. We gave them a copy of the PowerPoint that we had presented to you a couple months ago of all the capital projects. And then we also gave them a spreadsheet that you have received in the past that shows the status of your existing debt and then what's kind of on the horizon. So,
Is the coach team, are they all with the local government commission, or are they town managers or town employees?
good question. They do work for, they're employees of the local government commission, but two of them, I'm not sure what Ann's background is, but two of them are retired finance officers. Well, one of them was the retired Wake County finance officer, and then the gentleman, he had a very high-ranking position with the city of Raleigh in their finance office. But I don't know what Ann did.
Very good. I don't think we have any more business, do we? There's no action items.
Just
We've had-
information, and it's a lot to absorb, it's a lot
Yeah.
to, and we just want to make sure that you have ample time to review it, and if you have any questions, let us know, and we'll certainly finish up the draft letter and get you that this weekend.
I will say in conclusion that, having been party to one of the visits from the treasurer's office, first of all, I thought they were very helpful, in pointing out things that we could do and improve upon, and they were also very pleased with the improvements that we made from their last recommendations. And there's been a tremendous amount of time devoted to this, because the letter that, if you recall, the letter we got from the local government commission was very stringent, and they weren't, they never are, that pleasant, a message to get in the mail, but nonetheless, hats off to the staff for tackling it head on and providing the answers that we believe will, satisfy the local government commission when you meet in January. Thank y'all very much. A lot of work. Okay, if we have no further business, and we don't, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right. Thank y'all very much. Meeting adjourned.